Well, hello, welcome to another installment of the Mililani Minute videos. We're beginning a new year with these videos, but we're going to continue on with the series that I began last year. And so we're going to work through a series called Cornerstones, 200 Questions and Answers to Teach Truth. We're working through sin right now. So before Christmas, before everything that was going on at the end of the year, we started talking about sin. And we asked 10 questions about sin, mainly focusing on Adam and Eve's sin. We're going to pick that up as we continue on here today. And we're only going to ask 2 questions today. We're going to ask 2 questions tomorrow. And then Wednesday and Thursday will be 3 questions each as we wrap up the topic of sin. Today is exciting, though, because we actually get into talking about the first mention of the gospel. And so let's jump right in. The first question we're going to ask today is, what did God promise Adam and Eve would happen one day? What did God promise Adam and Eve would happen one day? That's an important question because if you remember, we talked about them sinning. God spoke to the serpent, God spoke to Adam, God spoke to Eve, and told them about the curse of sin. That the curse as a result of sin, that the serpent would crawl on his belly and he'd be more cursed than any other animal, that Eve would have strife or problems between her and her husband and increased pain in childbirth, that Adam would have to work extra hard to produce food to eat, that he'd have to work by the sweat of his brow. So we talked about those things coming into this. But thankfully, that's not the end of the story. You see, God also made a promise to Adam and Eve. So again, the question is, what did God promise Adam and Eve would happen one day? And here's the answer. God promised Adam and Eve that one of their offspring would strike the head of the serpent one day. Once again, God promised Adam and Eve that one of their offspring would strike the head of the serpent one day. So there's coming a day when the serpent is going to bruise the heel of one of their offspring. But God says, yes, you will bruise his heel, but he will bruise. And that word for bruise means crush that second time. He will crush the head of the serpent. So yes, he will bite the heel of the offspring. He will inflict pain. He will cause a problem. But the greater injury is the result of a head injury. And if you have a foot injury versus a head injury, we know that a head injury is much worse. And so what we have here is God promising them, there's coming a day when one of your offspring is going to fix everything. There's coming a day when this serpent will be done away with forever. We long for that day. And I encourage you to share with your children about who that offspring is. Of course, that's Jesus. Jesus came to this earth. He lived a perfect and sinless life. He died for our sins, and he rose again. There's coming a day when he will put Satan, the serpent, away for all of eternity. We long for that day. But that, again, the story continues. It wasn't all fun and games. It wasn't all exciting things. Of course, there was still punishment that needed to be handed out. So what happened to Adam and Eve after God judged them? That's the next question. What happened to Adam and Eve after God judged them? Well, after God judged Adam and Eve, they had to leave the Garden of Eden. If you remember in the story of creation, as we went through those questions, all of creation was perfect. God looked over everything that he had created on the sixth day. And what did he say? He said, behold, it was very good. So everything was perfect. And then sin got in the way and messed things up. Now, of course, that's not that wasn't a surprise to God. That wasn't something that he wasn't aware that would happen. He knew what was going on, and he knew what would happen with his creation. However, this perfect place that he had created for Adam and Eve to live in fellowship and in relationship with him, they could no longer live in this perfect place. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was there. The tree of life was there. They could no longer have access to that tree of life lest they live forever. So God removed them from the garden and said, you cannot be here any longer. So again, what happened to Adam and Eve after God judged them? Yes, he did promise that there's coming a day when all of this will be made right. but for now there is punishment. And that's a good point to bring up with your children. There may be promises of good times coming. There may be promises of a time when punishment will cease, but there are still consequences to our decisions. There are consequences to our actions. Adam and Eve, yes, God promised that one of their offspring would crush the head of the serpent. But until that day, there was a punishment that needed to be levied. There was a punishment that needed to be handed out. And for Adam and Eve, God, after God judged them and declared what they had done was sinful, he removed them from the garden. So once again, what did God promise Adam and Eve would happen one day? God promised Adam and Eve that one of their offspring would strike the head of the serpent one day. What happened to Adam and Eve after God judged them? After God judged Adam and Eve, they had to leave the Garden of Eden. And so those are important questions. As I said today, we begin getting into the idea of the gospel. We're going to flesh that out in future videos. But I encourage you to talk with your children about these questions and answers. And I hope this video is an encouragement to you. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.